The Shade, number 10, written by James Robinson, art by Fraser Irving. Last issue we left off with the Shade being captured by these weird Egyptian god things that are being controlled by Dudley Caldecott and Miles St. Aubrey, I believe his name is, and saying his powers don't work. This issue is the explanation. This issue is quite literally like 3/4 of the issue is just explaining. So I'm going to give the explanation to you, and then once we hit the back half, we'll pick up with the plot. But the explanation basically comes down to, way back in the day, these three gods ruled over Egypt, and they were ruling over as tyrants, and then all the people got fed up, and they started trying to attack the gods, but they were all powerful, until finally either a group of mages or a singular powerful mage rose up and bound the gods within some object or something like that. Then these guys, Caldecott and St. Aubrey, got their hands on it, and now they control the gods. I do want to say that during this entire thing, it's not just a straight explanation from Caldecott or St. Aubrey. It's being bounced back and forth of like Shade being able to figure out the obvious stuff and just like taunting them with the fact of like, yeah, no, you're very obvious. And Aubrey and Caldecott kind of just like bragging the whole time. It's done in a conversational style, and it really does work, but it's really hard for me to recap in that way without stopping to be like, and then they said, and then they said, and then they said. So just trust my calling of that it works like that. So anyway, Shade just wants to know, all right, what happened to my powers? Why don't they work? And they're like, well, it's the gods. Clearly, it's like, yes, no, clearly it's the gods. I understand that, but like, why specifically don't my powers work? And they're like, well, we tried probing into like exactly how the gods work, and frankly, we came up pretty empty. Last time we tried, we actually killed one of them. And you notice, yeah, there were 3 gods, now there are only 2 here. But that was back in 1936. And then one of the gods chimes up saying, like, my name is Nut, this is Fawn, and my husband was the one who was killed. And Shade's like, are you guys gods? Are you star travelers? What are you? And he's like, yes, no, all the above, none of the above, whatever. And St. Aubrey breaks up the conversation like, no, all right, hey, stop giving info. We're not doing that right now. And they explain how, yes, it was Caldecott's father who actually came across the thing in Egypt that allowed them to do this stuff. And basically they're like, yeah, no, basically their entire power, the whole thing we're using them for, because we don't use them to like smite people. We use them because their energy gives us like fortune. Like we're just lucky whenever we're around them. And he's like, well, why do you need them? Why do you need to keep them hidden then? And he's like, because we're lucky in illegal stuff. And Shade's like, drugs? And he's like, drugs, children, germs, weapons, you name it. And Shade's like, oh, for God's sakes, you're just irredeemable, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, well, here's the thing. We realized that we would make a whole lot of money if we could get terrorism to be back on the up. So we funded a group of nationals to cause this big terrorism thing today at 3 o'clock. So that's going to be happening. And then Shade starts to like fade out into shadow, and he's able to use his powers. And then St. Aubrey's like, hey, why aren't you stopping him? And the god's like, he's too powerful. You're keeping too much of our power from us. And so St. Aubrey calls over to an assistant nearby, like, give them a bit of power, just a tiny bit. Not a lot, just enough to stop him, which is enough to pull Shade back in. And he's like, so that's the device. Thank you for showing that to me. And then they go on and say, like, okay, so you're saying that you're part of this group, just some group. It doesn't even have a name. Do you, like, is it just the 2 of you? Because that's all I've seen. Is there a bunch? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, there's tons of them. Like, we have all the heads of industry in our group. That's how they managed to get so lucky. That's why they're able to succeed. So you will soon discover what happens. And they take Shade and they unbind him, but they walk him down this path. And there's just all these naked men, to which Shade makes the comment, wow, there's a lot of male nudity around here. I'm a bit scared as to what's going to happen next. And Shade starts to, again, slowly fade away, to which they give the god a bit more power in order to keep it under control. And Shade kicks back into his normal thing, and he's just like, yeah, all right, so what am I doing here? You here to try to kill me? It's like, no, we know you're like immortal. We're not trying to kill you. We are going to run some tests and stuff on you to try to figure out like what's going on. But right now we're here for a different human sacrifice. It's just some random streetwalker we picked up off the street. Like, technically we should be using virgin blood, but that's kind of hard to come by, so we're going to kill her. And Shade's like, Dudley, come on, man, not an innocent. Even I think I kill with a purpose here, and I was a villain for a while. And it's just like, no, 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 this is how things are, grandfather. I'm sorry. And then Shade starts to fade away again, to which they give the god more power. And then Shade finally sighs, and he's like, you know, maybe I shouldn't have been your biggest concern, because you just gave those gods a lot of power to stop me. And I know that they're not happy you took it away. To which point everyone realizes, oh shit, we don't have control over them anymore. We gave them back their power. So the gods immediately turn on St. Aubrey and just crush him. And then they start exploding out through the roof of the building. And Shade is left sitting there next to Dudley. And he's like, oh, Dudley, what have you done? As the gods are just laying siege to this city outside. And that's where it ends. I like it. I definitely do. I remember so little of the first few issues and like the stuff that led us to get here that honestly it doesn't really matter anymore. Like I recognize, like, they explained the part of Deathstroke came and attacked Shade because he didn't want Shade to be investigating in their affairs anyway. So like somehow that was supposed to throw him off the trail, and they remarked that was pretty stupid. Like that's the only thing that kind of got me interested in it at all. So no, there was I know there's a through line here, and if I went back and read it, I'd be able to pick up like, okay, they're talking about this person, this person, this person. It's the issue of a mystery being spread this far out. I do enjoy it. I think it's solid, this issue specifically, because it's the explaining issue, but they do it in such a just conversational way. It doesn't feel like a villain is just like bragging and just saying all their secrets. It genuinely feels like Shade is just smart mouthing the answers out of them. And it's written very well in that regard. So overall, I give this issue a 7.5. Honestly, you know what? I'm giving it the 8. The art manages to bump it up. The art is fantastic the whole way through. So I give it an 8. And it feels like the penultimate issue. It feels like things are going to wrap up next issue, but there is actually 2 more. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that. But no, solid throughout, and I am interested in seeing how this whole Egyptian god thing wraps up.